Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of TayTalks. I'm here with one of my good friends, Sarah Owen, and we're going to talk about eating disorders. So obviously, Sarah, I know a lot about you, but for the viewers, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Ohio University, your major, year, all of that?
Yeah, so I'm a sophomore here, and I'm going into nursing, and I'm currently almost done with my first full year of nursing school. So
Feels good, right?
It feels great. Yeah, it feels really good.
Okay, so I knew you, we've known each other for years and years,
Right.
and we used to play soccer together. She's a kick-butt soccer player. You know, she could kick the ball from literally the backfield to the front field, and that's all we had to do, and then we would score. So I've known you a long time. You've always been an amazing athlete. When did you really develop the eating disorders? What type of eating disorders have you been diagnosed with, and when did you develop it?
So I've always been a competitive person. That's always been one of the major aspects of my personality, I would say. And it really kind of started, I don't want to say go downhill, but it really kind of reared its ugly head when I was 16, around 15 and a half, 16 years old.
Okay.
I was a part of a pretty competitive national soccer team.
Not the one I was involved in.
No.
But it's fine.
It was something, it was honestly very short-lived, but, and it was something that they really took everything very seriously, and I really was into that because I wanted to take my sport to the next level. But I always kind of felt this sense of, I always have compared myself to others.
Okay.
And I would say that when I started on this soccer team, these girls were really good. I mean, they were really good players. And I was a good player in high school, but when I started out on this team, I realized, wow, Sarah, you really have to step your game up. I think the first thing that I started to do was look at the way I ate. So as I said, it was never I feel like when people think of an eating disorder, specifically what I was diagnosed with, anorexia, I feel like they kind of immediately think, well, they just stopped eating completely.
Okay.
I think that stigma, for me at least, I started to eat fruits, vegetables, salads, grilled chicken, salmon, just things that, are healthy to eat. But I really got to the point where I would never let myself indulge. I would never let myself even go out with friends or, have that bowl of ice cream that I would have all the time. I really, the competitiveness of everything that was kind of going on in my life, I felt like food and my weight were the two biggest things that I could keep under wraps and that I could control. And I kind of liked that sense of being able to control that when, sometimes things at soccer wouldn't go my way, or sometimes, other things in life wouldn't go my way. The one thing I could always control was my weight and what I ate.
Did you take all foods that were bad completely out of your house, or did you have them in there and you just wouldn't let yourself eat them? How'd that work?
So at first it was kind of a little game. When I had a craving, I would really, a craving for sweets or even pop. I would say it kind of started, I was a big Sunkist drinker, and so my first goal was, okay, I'm going to cut out all pop. I'm going to cut out, because that's a, kind of a high source of sugar and unnecessary calories, and so that was kind of the first thing that I eliminated. And then to me, it almost became a game. Okay, what's next? What can I eliminate next? What can I... And, again, going back to that competitive aspect of my personality, it was a competitive game to me.
It was like a competition with yourself.
Right. It was, okay, well, you went a whole week without having soda. Now let's try and see if we can go a whole week without eating your favorite ice cream. And then the next week, let's see if we can not put any Parmesan cheese on your spaghetti. It started off as very minuscule things, but then, obviously as it progressed, it became worse and worse. It went from being able to have, a portion of pasta to only being able to have spaghetti squash. I don't know if you know exactly what that is. This is just an example, but, I found myself not ever having the foods that I craved because as this progressed, and it's kind of, I don't want to say funny, but it's something that, as it was progressing, it was something that I didn't even notice at the time. It was, it all kind of, it was very gradual until I kind of got into the very depths of it. But as I was saying, I became literally afraid of the foods that I can eat today and that, I had eaten before. With the spaghetti example, any carbs, any bread, any pasta, any sugar or anything,
ice cream, any of that?
No, it was all, honestly, it was evil to me. I remember a time that my mother was cooking one of my favorite meals. She was making chicken parmesan, like the breaded chicken, the provolone, all that good stuff, right? And I would lock myself in my room while she was cooking, and of course she cooked for my brother, my father, and herself, and in the hopes that maybe I would have some as well. But I would go up to my room, shut the door, because I was really 100% convinced that if I were to inhale the smell even of my favorite foods, the foods that I had cut out of my life completely and avoided for all this time, that if I were to even smell the food, I would be, and
calories.
Right, this just shows my skewed state of mind at the time, but literally I would be inhaling calories, and that it's almost like an indirect form of gaining weight. I remember asking my mom, like, if I smell this food, am I going to gain weight? And I think that was like my parents both just kind of were like, this needs to be obviously medically addressed at this point.
What were the next steps? Where did you go? What happened?
We took the steps to go to Children's Hospital in Columbus, and they decided to admit me at the time and treat me specifically for the anorexia that they had diagnosed me with. And that was something that was, battling that, having to, kind of what they call refeed and take those steps to kind of literally gain weight back, which at the time, the thought of gaining weight was, I'd rather would have like jumped in front of a bus or like, done something, because gaining weight, losing the progress that I had made, putting on the pounds, not having, it was the worst thought to me at the time. I couldn't bear it. But being in that hospital and being forced to eat foods that they put in front of me, while I was sitting out there in the hallway, having these doctors and these nurses, kind of monitor me, my every move. That was very hard for me, but I think that with the support of my parents and, I worked with some really good doctors and nurses that, motivated me to eat the foods that were put in front of me, which again was something that was extremely difficult for me at the time. Once I got out of the hospital, I think for everyone, for my family, for myself, it was like, what do we do now? Like, how do we go about this to keep that progress? And it was a struggle, but we had a bunch of resources. We had, I worked with a nutritionist. I worked with, gosh darn it, I went through 2 hands worth of therapists in terms of, finding the right one and working with, somebody that got my situation and understood where I was coming from and why this had all kind of ensued in the first place. The road to recovery, in my opinion, it doesn't really end. It only gets easier.
Right.
And every female out there, if they're not even diagnosed with an eating disorder, I feel like at one point we all struggle with how we feel about our bodies.
And body dysmorphia.
Right,
Yeah.
and how we look and how we feel like we, look to other people. And, there's so many factors that play into it. And, with my situation in particular, I just think, my psyche, kind of the way, going back to the, being competitive and always wanting to be the best and, wanting to truly, look good for, boys and this, for me, it was all of those meshed into one. And, being a driven person, it went to the next level.
Right. But what did you tell yourself every day to kind of get yourself to be able to eat those evil foods that you said they were evil to you?
Right. Well, again, support times a million from my family, but in terms of within, like personally, it was, you have to want to have that drive to get better, just like you had that drive to want to lose all that weight and block out all those foods. And
you have to commit.
Right, you have to commit. It's definitely a commitment. And honestly, being in different support groups and being surrounded by people that are struggling with the same thing, I think the biggest thing is knowing that you're not alone. And, with as supportive as my parents were, they couldn't really relate to the way I was feeling, So surrounding myself with, you know, people that understood was very important for me. It takes an army, it takes a team. To be able to do this by yourself is something that, you know, is extremely difficult, and I wouldn't put it past a person to, you know, that didn't have the support to eventually bring themselves back up like I did. But I accredit the majority of my recovery process to the people that mean the most to me in life.
What is some advice that you would give to someone who's going through an eating disorder, whatever it may be? What's some advice?
And not even necessarily an eating disorder, but as we talked about before, those feelings of, you know,
Body dysmorphia?
right, all of those things kind of, I feel like, really compile into one. But you know, there's so many things, especially in our modern day world. Social media, really the biggest one is social media. I know for me that had a huge influence on how I looked at myself and how I felt like I was perceived by others.
Oh, right. It's a mentally, I mean, I look at social media and I'm like, why am I not that skinny?
No, I know.
It's hard.
And honestly, you know, this kind of sounds like, you know, a broken record, but people's lives aren't as great as they portray to be on, you know, platforms like that. So, and that was something that took me a while to figure out. I've deleted my Instagram plenty of times, reacted, you know, kind of, I'm just trying to view everything sort of as, you know, we're all struggling, which really, you know,
in some way, shape, or form, everyone has their own individual struggles, right?
Absolutely. So, you know, you asked what advice I would give. You know, it's super important to find those things in your life that are the most, you know, triggering, so to speak. Recognizing those triggers, whether that be social media, whether that be a person in your life, whether that be, it can be a whole number of things. Recognizing those is a hard step, but it's imperative that you do so, because when everything's sort of laid out on the table, you get kind of a more clear vision of the things that you need to eliminate, and that you need to say, this is really aiding in the way I feel about myself, in the way that I perceive myself. And I think, you know, getting rid of, you know, that negativity, so to speak, is the first step. Acknowledging that there may be an issue there is another important step, because, you know, by any means, you know, could a person go through the recovery process and be in denial. They need to be open and willing to sort of, you know, take those steps,
progress in recovery,
and make that change. And that's, like you said, committing to recovery. That's imperative. Having a support system, 100%. Like I said, my family, my grandparents, my brother, my friends, people who are there for you and who are willing to support you in any way, is really an important thing as well. People could be at the lowest of, you know, they're low, but, you know, it just takes that flipped switch for them to want to make those good changes and those healthy changes. And, you know, for instances like me, that took a hot minute. It took me a while to say, okay, Sarah, you deserve to feel happy and healthy, and you deserve to eat the foods that you want, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
And look at you now. I mean, you're here, you're thriving at Ohio University.
Right.
You're a nursing major, you're going to be the best nurse ever.
Appreciate that, Tay.
Like, you've come a long way.
I you know, I want to say, you know, by any means, I'm not like a medical professional or anything like that, but I believe that, you know, if I can do it, anybody can, because taking that first step is the hardest step. But every other step after that, you get more proud of yourself, and it's just, you know, where I'm at right now, a happy, healthy college student, you know, I'm living proof that you can overcome whatever you're going through. Recovery is a long, hard, grueling process, but, you know, it's doable. And I can promise you one thing, that it is worth it in the end. I truly believe that with hard work, dedication, and a good support system, that it's 100% absolutely possible.
Well, look at that. Oh my gosh, high five. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Sarah.
Love you, Tay.
Love you. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and make sure you share this video because it really can help someone in need. And be sure to subscribe to see more TayTalks content as it comes out. Have a good night!